Hello and thanks for joining us for another Airbrush Asylum video. Welcome to part 3 of the skull with green real fire. In this video we're going to show you how to add the real fire and tint the skull in green. So be sure to watch until the end of this video so you see how the whole process is done. If you haven't already, make sure you check out parts 1 and 2 so that you know how I got up to this stage in the artwork. So I am using my Iwata HPCS Eclipse with a 0.35 needle in it, and I'm using Turquoise Trident Paint. So this is thinned down to my liking, so a little over sort of 1:1. I like to go a little bit thinner with my paints, especially my detail colours. For example, the whites I usually thin at about 70% paint, 30% reducer, and I drop the pressure. But for this particular tone, I want to build a layer of flame, so I'm doing that obviously over the black existing base color. So that's why I'm using this turquoise. It's got a bit of opacity, so we can get right into it and just start to build that first layer, and then we can move forward and tint the following layers after that. So the idea for this step of fire is to create obviously the shape that you want to go with, and to start creating the flow. You want to use the template but not too often, so be sure not to use it all the time. You just use it to kind of draw your flames and then elaborate freehand off that. Now we're going to bring the fire up and around and immerse the skull within the flame. So you've got to remember we are going to do multiple layers to get that depth, but I want to start to sort of visualize how I'm going to incorporate the skull within this fire. So first and foremost, I'm thinking the eye sockets, the nostril, the mouth, good areas to have flame licks coming out. And then you kind of have to keep the flames around the skull a bit more neat so that you don't just totally ruin what you've already done. But you'll see that as I progress further into the artwork. So you'll notice here that I'm working those flame licks out of the eye sockets so that I've got a connection between the actual mural and the fire. You can see already how much more three-dimensional that makes it. So whenever you've got an object that's within the flame, just think about it, how you would incorporate it, and try and visualize how that fire would wrap around and come through the skull, or whatever it is that you may be immersing in amongst the fire. So I'm now using a Blue Tack Rag just to remove any of the dry overspray. So this is a good thing to do in between each step. I'm showing you how to do it in this particular step, but I did it right through the process. I just didn't continually film it. So every time you do any of the layers, then come in with your blue tack cloth, and that'll get any of that dried paint taken right off there. I'm using a Phthalo green by Trident, and you can see I've just sped up the video a little bit here. So I'm basically just coating straight over the top of the turquoise layer that I did earlier. If you see any skips within the editing, I had a few areas which were blocked, like I actually blocked them. I blocked the camera, so I thought instead of just having my arm in the way for the whole shot, I thought why not just edit it out and you'll get a better understanding of where we're at. So keep that in mind when you're watching. So you can see the phthalo green is really a great base for the first layer of flame. Again, this is mixed sort of just over 1 to 1. When I'm trying to get quick coverage, I don't want to mix them too thin. And now I'm using that same phthalo green mix to tint the skull. So obviously the skull was created using the whites, the transparent black earlier, and so you virtually finished the painting, and now I'm tinting it with that green straight over the top. Because the colour is transparent, you know, you're not going to lose all of your detail. If you're concerned, mix it up with a little bit of transparent base as well as the green, and then add your reducer to that, and you'll get it a lot more transparent than what it is straight out of the bottle, but it also depends on what brand you're using. So now that I've completed that phthalo green, again I would have tack ragged it, just not showing you that in the video, but now I'm going to do another layer of fire using my turquoise, so the same mix as what we started with. And what I'm doing is I'm creating another layer of flame, so that'll be for my next tone, which I'll tint this particular layer with, and that'll start to create my depth. The key is you don't want to follow the previous layer. Okay, so the first layer you complete, and then the next one you kind of follow the same sort of flow, but you don't just accentuate it by only hitting the highlighted areas. You're essentially doing a complete new layer, and try not to focus on what you've done. So the template that I'm using here is by Art Tool. It's the Michael Valley True Fire series. This is the 2nd degree burn set. So I'll pop a link in the description to this particular template, as well as some other products that I've used in this video, so be sure to check that out. And if this is the first time to the channel, we'd love to have you as part of our community, so feel free to hit subscribe. Make sure you tap on that bell icon, that'll notify you every time we put out new content, and that way you will stay up to date and you won't miss any of our new videos. So now that I've finished that layer of turquoise, I'm adding dark green. You'll also notice that I've done some highlights on the actual skull with the turquoise just to brighten some of those areas up. So when my dark green goes over the top, it's going to sort of give that tonal value, which we lost a little bit of that when we did the phthalo green. Okay, so I'm going to add another layer of flame to create even more depth. So this again with the turquoise. So this time I'm going to follow the flame a little bit more closely and just try and accentuate what I've already got there. It still may veer off a little bit from the previous layer, but I'm a bit more cautious now as to where I'm putting it and taking my time to sort of follow the licks. That said, I'm not structuring it too much, because with any real fired artwork you want to kind of just flow with it. You don't want to restrict yourself too much. I find as soon as you do that, then you kind of stuff up the flames and they just look wrong. So try your best to just relax with it and just go for it. And apologies for not remembering to turn the extraction fan off for this little process, so yeah, sorry about the fan background noise. A little bit of a fast forward. Truth is, I forgot to record. Anyhow, you get the idea. I've added more turquoise to the skull and completed a whole heap of highlights and texturing using this turquoise tone. So this is just to brighten it up so that when my next tone goes over the top, it just slightly tints it, but it's giving it more of that tonal value that we need. So switching back to the dark green, this time it's over thinned. Alright, so I've made it a lot thinner, added a lot more reducer. You could also add transparent base just to make it more transparent, but for this purpose I've just over thinned it just to apply it very, very fine, just a nice little mist. I'm not going over everything this time, I just want to tint it a little bit and then yeah, just get that extra layer of depth. So again, just being very careful with my over-thinned mix, and I'm really just tinting everything, but trying not to overdo it. So you'll notice here I'm just reworking a few sections. I've let those dry off, so I'm kind of moving around a little bit, and I'm also sort of aiming quite heavily at the sort of holes there within the flame, and I'm darkening them off with this tone and letting my overspray just blend out so it's sort of seamless into the so it looks like there's a highlight on the rise of that fire, if that makes sense. And I'm doing the same now on the top of the tank, just being very careful where I'm putting it, not to overdo it, but just deepening some of those darker spots within the flame to push those sections back a little bit into the background. Okay, so for the final step, we're going to re-detail a lot of the dark spots within the skull. I'm using a transparent black. So I've mixed transparent base with the amount of reducer that I'm happy with. I have made this mix reasonably thin, so over reduced, just so that it can really flow nicely through my 0.18 micron, my CMSB micron from Iwata. So what I'm using this tone for is really the final detailing. So as I mentioned before, yes, it is a very thin tone, but it's still strong, so it's almost black. So I mix the transparent base with my reducer, add plenty of drops of black until I'm happy, so that it's not a complete solid black. I still get some of those transparent properties, which I want, because I don't want to ruin all of the texturing and underlying detail that I've built up over the series of these videos. But I just want to really pull out some of that detail and deepen off all the shadows to really make that skull look like it's immersed within the fire. So just adding some final texturing using my microdot template by Drew Blair School of Realism. And I'm just holding that on the surface and then moving it as I'm spraying through it. Okay, so here we have the completed skull artwork with the fire surrounding that skull, so it looks like it's immersed within the flames on the top of that chopper tank. So I do hope that you enjoyed watching all three parts of this particular tutorial. Until next time, go grab your airbrush and go do some amazing artwork yourself. And thanks again for watching, and we look forward to catching up again with you for another tutorial and another unique artwork very, very soon.